We're going to talk today about the physical resilience outlook. This is 10 tests to predict successful aging. So, who wants to live to be 100? Raise your hand. Who wants to live to be 100? Raise your hand. This is typical. So I do this talk for lots of different workplaces, engineering firms. Almost nobody raises their hand. Why don't you want to live to be 100?
Quality of life.
Quality of life. Because you've seen 100 and it doesn't look too good. Agreed? Who raised their hand and said they want to be 100? Okay. Why do you guys want to be 100?
Just to continue carrying out my passion for different things in life with other people and enjoying life.
Sure. All right. That's a good answer. Okay. So let's change the question. Who wants to live to be 100 if they have near the same function that they have today? They can do all the things they want to do. Oh, well, different question, right? Okay, everybody raises their hand. Good. Okay, so we need to solve for that problem. Unsuccessful aging is usually related to an orthopedic incident. So if you're over the age of 65, is anybody here over the age of 65? Okay. If you fall and fracture your femur is your big bone from your hip all the way down your knee. If you fall and fracture your femur, what is the chances you're going to die from that injury in the next 365 days? Percentage? Pretty low. What? 5? 10? Less than 5. Less than. Anybody else have a guess? Pretty high? Okay, what's pretty high?
Close to 90%.
Yeah. So it's somewhere between 30 and 40%, depending on the research that you read. 30 to 40% chance you're going to die from that injury. Okay? So it's not usually, people do die from, they have a surgery and it goes bad, and they have sepsis and something terrible happens. But that's not usually the most common way that it goes. The most common way that it goes is you're a little bit older, you fracture your femur. It's really difficult to recover from that injury if you are under-muscled and you're not in good shape to begin with. So if someone in their 40s or 50s has that injury, much less chance of them dying because they haven't seen the typical decline in function, strength, and VO2 max, which we'll talk a ton about today, that's someone who is a little bit older. Now, you are active, you are showing up to yoga, you're coming here, so a little bit different. I like your chances of living from that injury, right? So you might be skewing the data, but as you get older, the increases of that happening is a real risk. They just tend to, if you're under muscled to begin with, and then you're in bed for weeks at a time, now your muscles get even smaller, and then the ability to recover from that injury becomes very difficult. 50%, so you fracture your femur, although we're throwing you out because you're skewing the data, there's a 50% chance you'll never return home. So anybody that fractures their hip, right, if they survive the injury, they'll never be able to live independently again. They'll have to go to assisted living, or they'll need help doing that, okay? Just from a simple fracture in their femur. Okay? It's usually this orthopedic incident, and that's usually preceded by a strength and mobility deficit. So instead of not wanting to live to 100, because we see that it doesn't look like such a fun thing, let's solve for this problem. Okay, so my name is Travis Robbins. Like Evan said, I've had my practice for over 20 years here in the Lehigh Valley. So I've had the cool experience of watching my patients go from their 60s to their 80s. I've seen that time span, and typically it doesn't go very well. So that's what we're trying to fix. This is a picture of us from our turkey drive this year. In the beginning of my career, I played every sport in high school. I played football in college, and when I got out of school, I was like, man, I really want to work with athletes. And that was fun. Last year we had a kid in that plays for the Jets. Last year we had a kid in that played international basketball. We've seen professional baseball players. That's a small part of our population. Most of our population is typical ortho outpatient. And that, in the beginning of my career, was really fun. But now I kind of dish that off to my other PTs. I'm looking to solve the problem of how come we cannot go from like our 60s, 70s, 80s successfully. Probably a reflection of my parents are getting older, so my parents are 76. So I'm very interested in not having to take care of them at a very high level. So I've told them, I've got the information. It's usually a lack of education. If you mess this up, this is your fault, I'm not taking care of you. So that's kind of a scare tactic for them. But they're actually doing the stuff that we're developing in terms of a test that we'll talk about. So we really need to solve for poor resilience as we age. So how do we tackle this problem? We need some kind of measurement. So here's another question. What happens when you go to your doctor? Who's been to a checkup? They haven't been sick or needed something fixed or anything like that, but they just went to their doctor for a normal checkup. Who's done that recently? Okay. When you went to your doctor, what happened? Tell me about the appointment.
They just do general blood tests, things like that, and they usually send you for blood work.
Sure. They take some measurements, right? What are some other measurements they take when you go into your checkup? Blood pressure. Okay, let's take that. Last time you went in, you said you went to the doctor recently? Was your blood pressure good?
Yeah.
Great. Good job. If your blood pressure was high, you walked in there, you weren't really having any symptoms. If your blood pressure was high, what would probably happen? Don't overthink it. These questions are really easy. Okay, there would be some kind of intervention. Okay, so because prolonged blood pressure, high blood pressure is terrible. It's really bad. What we would love to see is your physician says, hey, what's going on at work? Are you kind of stressed out? What's your diet look like? Are you moving at all? What's your sleep look like? Some doctors do that, some don't. We're not here to pull apart the medical industry. That would take like 7 more talks. But there's going to be some kind of intervention. Typical one is pill, which is not always the worst, but not always the best. But there's going to be some kind of intervention because they took a measurement and then something happened. So what we're trying to figure out is why, if poor aging is related to an orthopedic incident, there's not a set of tests usually that you can do or that you take in order to make sure, hey, if you come in and something's not right, there should be some kind of intervention. So that's what we're trying to solve for. Okay, so what do we measure? Right? So if we wanted to measure successful aging, this is the toughest question I'm going to ask you. What are some tests that I might have you do? I'm going to show you all the tests, but what are some tests that I might have you do that would say, hey, if you do good on this test, then you're probably going to age successfully? Yeah? Mobility, we have to look at your mobility, how your joints are moving. Yes, that's incorporated in there. What else? Balance, perfect, okay? So let's go back to that last example. If you fall and fracture your hip, if you can stand on one foot for 30 seconds without losing your balance, there's a significantly lower chance of you falling at home. That's how you're going to fracture your hip, by the way. If you're at home and you have a fall, if you have parents, grandparents that are older, that's how they're going to fracture their hip. So why don't we prevent that problem from occurring in the first place, okay? What are some other things I might test on you?
Cardio tests.
Yes, exactly. VO2 max, which we'll talk about. Okay. Wow, you guys are really good. Okay, that was the hardest question, but we need to figure out what these tests are. So here are the 10 tests. We've been developing this for a couple years. So it's me and 2 other therapists on my team, and we started to see this problem where it was just like our patients are not successfully aging. I don't think it's from a lack of effort. Sometimes it is. We have patients that, I'm old, I'm just supposed to fall apart, and this is what I've resigned myself to. No matter what we say to them, they're reserved to that. I can lead a horse to water, can't make her drink, right? So, but most people are not like that. Most people they don't understand what's going on, and they don't have the education that we have, and really the experience that we have of treating for 2 decades to try to figure this stuff out. So, a long time ago, we had this out to like 40 tests we wanted to do. Well, guess what? That's a really long time to have someone do 40 tests. We've got to kind of narrow it down. And we narrowed it down based on the answer to the question that we asked people is, what do you want to do when you're 100? And say, okay, if these are the physical things you want to do, here's the test that we do. A bar hang. When's the last time someone was on a bar and then hung and then saw how long you could hang there? High school, right? Oh yeah, it's like the physical fitness test? Sure. Okay. So it was like 4 or 5 years ago for you. Right, okay. So that is a reflection of overhead shoulder mobility and grip strength. If anybody ever heard of blue zones, like people that live a really long time, so what research tries to do is like, okay, we found these people that live to 100. What are they doing? And I just want to copy them. It's a really hard thing to do. There's one weird thing that almost universally you can equate to living to an older age and being functional. It's grip strength. I can measure your grip strength right now. I give you a handheld dynamometer, I can get a number, I can tell what your grip strength is, I can measure you against your peers in your decade of age, and I can give you an idea high, middle, low. Okay? Why is that equated with, you gave me like a confused face, like what the hell? Okay, so don't worry, I have the aging thing fixed. Everybody in nursing homes, we're just going to give them captains of crunch. You ever see these things where you go, and then we just have really strong grip strength, and they're going to live forever. Does that make sense? Hopefully not. So how are people that are living a really long time have a strong grip strength? What is that telling us about what they're doing?
They're active.
Okay, they're active, and they're picking up heavy stuff, and they're doing physical things. That's why they're living longer, not because they have like a strong grip strength. So that's kind of a tricky part of what this is. Step test. So when you get old, and not you, because you guys are all health conscious, but when some people get older and they get to kind of retirement age and they want to move, what's a common thing for them to move into? A ranch home. Why?
No steps.
Yeah, it's been great. No steps. That's like the only form of exercise some of these people get. Like, it's like, you need to stay in a house that has steps. They avoid it. So they start cutting out things in their lives that can help them out. So a step test is really, really important. Balance, we just did that. 30 seconds. Can you do that for 30 seconds to a minute? And we can get an idea of how well you're going to age. Vertical jump. When's the last time someone tested their vertical jump? Or if I asked you, like if I asked you, hey, you could probably tell me how much you weigh. You might be able to tell me what your blood pressure is. You might be able to tell your cholesterol is.
You don't want to tear your ACL.
You don't want to tell your ACL. So this is great. Thank you for saying that. If we start narrowing our activity because we're afraid of something really bad happening, that is like a very minimal chance of that happening. I understand that fear. I try to avoid pickup basketball because I'm at the age range where I see all dudes that are in from 45 to 55, Achilles tendon tears. I do not want that to happen. Now, I know what to do to prepare for that, and I avoid it for other reasons, but that is a real thing.
And you're in shape, you still have.
And what?
They're in shape.
And it can still happen, yes. Yes, I can go walk across the street and I might get hit by a car. Could happen. What is the likelihood of that happening? Low. And if I take the right precautions, I probably could avoid that. But you're right. No matter what you do, if something really bad can happen, I would argue the negative effects of narrowing what you do far outweigh the positive, or far underweigh the positive effects of doing it, which you already know. You're giving me good questions, which is good. Okay, so people are kind of afraid. They don't jump. So the Russians have a saying, when we stop jumping, we start dying. Jumping is really, really important for your longevity. So we want to try to measure that. More importantly, it's a measurement of power. So how far you can get your body from the earth is a measurement of how powerful you are, which is something you really want to be good at as you age. Okay, 3-cone drill. This is just an agility drill. You guys have probably seen something like this, where we're just trying to see how quickly you can get through an agility drill. Sit to rise. So this has actually been heavily researched. The research is out of Brazil. As you get into your 60s and 70s, they can very closely tell you when you're going to die based on this test. So this is going from standing down to the floor and get back up. When's the last time you went from standing down to the floor and got back up? Well, you just did yoga, right? Did you do yoga?
I don't think I did. We did today.
Okay, great. So you got down on the ground and got back up. Is that something you commonly do during the day? Anybody do that during the day? Okay, great. Please keep doing that. You can very easily avoid getting on the ground. We sleep in a bed that's this tall. We get in a car and drive to work. We sit at a desk all day. And we come home, we sit on the couch, we drink a beer, and we go to bed. It is very easy. When I ask patients, when's the last time you got on the ground and got back up? It's like 10 years, I don't even know, 20 years? Like, you can avoid doing it. Well, that's not an activity you want to cut out of your life, because at some point, if you're on the ground, you want to be able to get back up from that. And it can be kind of predictive of strength, range of motion, mobility, that kind of stuff. It's a really good test to do. So it's a test that's in our 10 tests, and you get a score. So on all these tests, you get a score of 0 to 10. You add all of it up, you get 100, right? So it's very relatable to anybody who has been in school, right? You get 100 on the test, then you're doing good, right?
When you sit to rise, is that using your hands or not?
Right, so you lose points. If you want to try it? Come on, let's go. So here's the instructions.
Okay.
Go from standing down to the floor as smoothly as you can, using as few points of contact. You didn't let me. I could have helped you out there. Okay, so you lost a point.
Okay.
So use as few points of contact as possible. Most common ones you'll think of is your hand, but
Okay.
also a point of contact would be your knee or your hip.
So like squat down and go down?
What you did was great. Just do that, but don't push your right knee down to the ground because you're going to lose a point.
Okay,
So do what you
like
just did.
this?
So you can do it the other way. It's the first way you did it. You could do that. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so you got a perfect score. You get 5 points on the way down,
Okay.
5 points on the way up. Got a
Okay.
5 because you controlled the motion. If she came down and she kind of, like if you watched me do it, she kind of flopped down and lost a little bit of control, she would lose a little points. But that was very good. Okay, now you've got to stand up. Okay, that was really good. I would give you a 10 out of 10, which is awesome. Very few
You know
people
what I
would.
do? I put my hands
Yes.
on and stand up holding her.
Yeah, okay,
She's
so-
30 pounds.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. I
Yes.
appreciate it. That is really good, guys. That's not typical. So she got a 10 for that, which is awesome. She just has to get a 10 on all the other ones, then she'll get 100. Then she'll be the first 100 we've ever gotten, okay, which might be possible. But that, like your ability to do that, you would lose a point. Like if you put your hand down and got up, you'd lose a point. If you had to put 2 hands down and 2 knees down, you would lose 4 out of the 5 points. So it's pretty easy to lose points on that.
Did you get 100?
No, I would lose a half a point on the way down, and I would lose a point on the way up. I don't have good enough control to get it down, and I need to get 1 hand on the ground in order to get up safely. I can try to do it, but it's not my interest to do that. But I need to improve on that. You're right. Deadlift. So this is when you hear deadlift, you probably think of like straight bar deadlift. You guys ever seen that? With a straight bar on the ground, you pick it up and you put it back down. That's it. Deadlift is picking up anything off the ground. If you picked up your purse off the ground, you deadlifted today. Just depends on the amount of weight that you have. The deadlift test, great job. The deadlift test that we do is with a sandbag, and you can't use the handles. So you want to be able to pick up something awkward. Not everything in life has a handle on it, right? Like a child, or although they have some handles on them, but like a bag of sand that you want to move, or mulch, or if you have a salt agitator in your basement, you got to get stuff downstairs. Not everything has like a handle on it. So the test that we do, it is graded for men and women. All these tests are pretty similar. Some of them are different for sex. Some of them are different for decade of your life, and we'll go into that a little bit. But the deadlift for males, you need to be able to pick up 70 pounds. So you scoop it up the ground, put it on your shoulder, and then put it back down. It's a sandbag. You guys, I probably have sandbags around here somewhere. And do that 5 times to the right, 5 times to the left. For women, it's 40 pounds. Okay, it's still a lot. You're right. Okay, so we had a college student that was in this weekend. She was a runner. She weighed about 105 pounds, and this is a very difficult one for her to do. She could do it on one side, but she had an old shoulder injury on the other side, and she could only do one on that side. This is like a 22-year-old person. So. And as she was going through, she said, wow, I really need to work on that. I said, yeah, you do. You're a great runner. She can run like a 5-minute mile. But in order to be a well-rounded, aging human, she wants to be good at everything. Now, as a 22-year-old college student, probably not super concerned about that. But as you get older, she wants to be more concerned about that. A push-up, this is pretty straightforward, right? So this is an expression of upper extremity strength. The first time I had my mother, who's 76, do this, she could not do a push-up, which is pretty common. Most, especially females, are a little bit less strength in the upper body. They struggle with that. So her programming to improve her score is a little bit different than someone that can do 5 push-ups that we really want to see do 15 push-ups, which we'll talk more about. A farmer's carry. So let me know what a farmer's carry is. I know Evan does them in here, right? So if you had 2 kettlebells over there and you picked them up and then you walk with them, that would be a farmer's carry. Okay, so we think that you should be able to put, depending on your age, although it doesn't change much as you get older, half your body weight in each hand. Okay, so if I weighed 200 pounds, I'd have 100 pounds in each hand. And I should be able to walk 100 yards with that. Okay? So that's one of the tougher tests to do. Okay? So take your body weight, cut it in half, and you should be able, that is not different female to male, by the way. Females have to do the same thing because they're typically a little bit lower body mass, and be able to do that. Most people don't do well at that, but that is something, again, as we ask what people want to do on their 100th birthday, it works really well into activities that they want to be able to do. And a Rockport test is a corollary for VO2 max. Anybody ever had a VO2 max test in a lab? Most people have not. Oh, you have?
Yeah.
All right, how fun is it?
It's not fun.
So they shove an apparatus around your mouth, and then you run as fast as you can before you pass out or throw up. That's pretty much what it is. So you can do it on a bike, you can do it on a treadmill. You might have heard of a nuclear stress test, where if you're not healthy enough to do that, they'll put they'll inject a solution into your body and it gets your heart rate up and just we want to see what happens when your heart rate's going boom, 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 right? So you can get corollaries to that. Meaning, this is a Rockport test. All you're going to do is walk on a treadmill for a mile, and then we're going to take some data from you, including your heart rate, age, sex, weight, some of that stuff, and we can get a basic idea of what your VO2 max is. But those are the 10 tests. The test takes about an hour to do in our facilities, and I'll tell you more about that. But this is a picture of us. So these are all my DeSales kids. We have a partnership with DeSales University. We're actually studying this test. It's going to take a long time. The first thing we're studying is reliability. It's just like, are the tests repeatable? And when 2 people score them, do we get a similar score? And then we're looking at validity. Validity is if you get a 3 on a test, and I give you programming, and you actually do it, and then we retest it, does your score improve? That's one form of validity. The more important one is, if you score highly on this test, is it more predictive of you not dying early? And that's going to take 30 years. But I'm not doing anything else for the next 30 years, so that's what we're going to work on. Okay. If you want to do this test, you have to be over the age of 18. You have to be not pregnant. It takes about an hour, and you can apply here. I have cards here that I'll hand you guys out. Just meet me after I talk, and I can give you one of these cards if you're interested in doing this. But key takeaways, if I never see you again, okay? So just get a plan. Let's take something that you want to do when who wants to do something when you're 100? When you're 100 years old, sorry, I haven't said anything yet, so I'm going to pick on you. What do you want to be able to do? Golf. What's required for you to golf? Think about the physical activity you have to do.
Be able to move.
Yeah, you got to be able to rotate your spine,
Rotate.
right? You got to be able to walk. Even if you take a cart, you put a decent amount of steps in when you're doing a round of golf. Okay, so when you're 100, for sure, you want to be able to golf 9 holes, 18 holes?
9 holes.
Let's say 9. Okay, so we're being reasonable. If I can golf 9 holes when I'm 100 years old, you know what? I'd be pretty happy. Well, you better be able to golf 18 when you're 70, right? So you have to kind of set yourself up for success at a younger age. It's never too late to start this stuff. It's always better to start it earlier. Okay? Another thing people commonly tell me is I want to be able to travel. And so I have kids, they're spread out. I got one in California. I want to be able to get on an airplane. If I can't get on an airplane, it's going to be really hard for me to visit them, right? So as you travel now, it's probably not that big of a deal, but think about it when you're 100. What's required for you to go from your house to an airport and get on a plane and go to California?
A lot of walking.
Okay, a lot of walking.
Obviously.
You got to be able to carry luggage. You got to be able to tolerate sitting. There's a decent drive to the airport, probably. Decent flight. That's a long flight, right? And so luggage. So you got to have to get to the airport. Depending on what terminal you're in, you have to walk a long way. You're probably going to be rolling something behind you. Once you get in the plane, what do you got to do with that thing? You got to lift it up and you got to put it overhead. How much is your overhead? Mine's like 60 pounds. I try to jam as much crap out. So let's say it was 40 pounds. Okay? So if you want to be able to do that when you're 100, I'm going to go ahead and argue that when you're 60, you better be able to put like 70 or 80 pounds overhead and do that, right? So that's just a plan. You got to put together a plan in order to be successful with this. You got to have a lot of muscle mass. And the more you have, the longer you live. That's one of the things that is very closely correlated with length of your life. It's not just like quality, it's not just length of life, right? No one wants to live to be 100 and the last 10 years of it is a dumpster fire. Everybody has seen that, right? You want to be able to live a long time, but you also want to be independent and be able to do the things you want to do for a long time. Okay? And high VO2 max. VO2 max, I know I didn't explain it, that was bad. It's just a measure of like how good a shape you're in. That's the most basic way to do it. It's your body's ability to process oxygen and use it. And you can measure that at a very high level in a lab if you want to. You don't need to. There's different things that you can do. And as long as you use the same test, I would not compare your VO2 max test that you did in a lab to your Rockport test, because those are 2 different tests, so that's going to get you thrown off. But as long as you're making improvements in that, then that's all you need to do. You don't have to show up to a lab. Okay, this is a chart with a lot of numbers, but here's what I want your takeaway to be. There's different categories of this. So there's kind of 4 quartiles, which is like fair, good, excellent, and superior and elite. We kind of put those in the same quartile. This poor one is like, unfortunately, especially as you get older, where most people hang out. So these are VO2 max numbers. Okay? So do you remember what your VO2 max was? 55. And how old are you?
32.
32. Okay. So, and this is for females, which is great. There's a different chart for males. But so, can everybody see? So we're going to go here and then 55. Wow. You are superior in VO2 max. So her VO2 max is really, really good. Okay. So what I want you to know here is the win is not to go from good to excellent or even excellent to superior. Do you see this number on the bottom? 77, 91, 35? Okay. This is your chance of surviving in the next 10 years based on this test. Okay. So we go way down to poor. So if your VO2 max then, if you guys have not done your VO2 max, you have no idea what this number is, don't worry about it. If you're in the poor category, no matter what your age is, there's a 33% chance that you're going to die in the next 10 years. Okay? So that might not seem like much, but that's way too high for me. Like, I'm not interested in that. I don't want that to be my chance of dying. Just going from poor to fair will significantly change that number, and then just going to good. So the biggest win here is to go from poor, where more so as you age, as you get older, more people hang out in poor than you think. If you can just go from poor to good, which is not that hard to do. The only problem is you don't work on it. Okay, most people, as they get to that age, they're working on like their financial retirement stuff. Well, if you die, all that money ain't gonna go nowhere to your kids. So this is something that I want you to start looking at and investing in. It's not that hard to improve your cardiovascular health and your VO2 max. It doesn't mean you're like putting in 4 hours a week, max effort on a rower. It does not mean that at all. Actually, most of it you spend in zone 2. So there's different zones of training, if you guys have heard of that. Zone 2, there's like all sorts of different scales. But just take zone 2 and zone 5. You want to spend some time in zone 5. Zone 5 is when you're done, you're on the floor, and it's going to take you a while to recover from that, like a couple minutes for you to lay there before you can actually get up. That's really pushing hard. A very small amount of getting your VO2 max up is spent there. Most of it's in zone 2. Zone 2 would be if we were running or riding a bike next to each other, or on a treadmill for that matter. I could talk to you, but I wouldn't want to talk to you. I'd be like, you know what, can we do this? Just like, you could do it, but it's not something you're super interested in carrying a long conversation. A lot of people want like, oh, well, how do I know exactly the zone? Can I use my heart rate? You can't use heart rate. It's just it varies too much. As subjective as that sounds, like, hey, you just want to, you can have a conversation, but you really don't want to. That's how you measure it. Really, how you measure it is lactate, which you'd have to take blood while you're exercising, which is just not. It's almost as feasible as doing a VO2 max test, so it's not something you do. If you get really into it, you can do that, but not necessary. Okay. So the future of what I want this test to do, again, we're in the very early stages. We've been working on it for 2 years. We've been doing research on it for the last year. We'll present our research in the fall of this year. But we really want this to be the yearly checkup for successful aging. That'll take a long time to get to understand. But I know you guys are listening to this, and it makes a little sense, right? Nobody said, this is like pretty dumb. It makes a little bit of sense to you. So all I need is a little bit of sense, so we can kind of push this forward. But this really shouldn't be something you go into your physical therapist and get done. It's a test that you get done every day. That's the goal. Okay? Also, we're developing it that you don't need a physical therapist. I would be able to give you information, and you should be able to do this on your own. It's purposely made with minimal equipment, so there's no barriers to entry. So we have a membership site, an online platform, where you can just do the whole test. There's videos of us showing you how to do it, and it's as good as we can get it as us being there watching you do it. So we're working on that as well. But it is better to have it done by a clinical professional, because if you have pain with any of these tests, then that's not something you want to avoid. We need to kind of fix that problem first. So we do these tests in our office. If we did a test and you had pain, we would need to check that out. And that probably would result in some kind of, again, intervention. Get your score, improve your score with programming. So there's basically 3 levels of scoring. We said we get 10 for each one, right? So low, middle, high. My mom scored low on push-ups, so her program is going to look way different than someone scored high, like 8 or above, on push-up tests. And you can even argue if you're 8 or above, you're probably pretty good. If there's somewhere else where you're lower, you want to try to work on that to be a well-rounded human. But there's an online membership site where it has all the videos in there, and then you can just do this programming. So we do design it for you to do it on your own, but if you want some assistance, then you can ask us for that too. Let me have any questions? Yeah?
If you wanted to do that assessment, can we just come in, or do we need a doctor's order?
Now, it's not a physical therapy incident. So right now is the only time that you'll be able to do it for free, because it's part of research. So it's absolutely free right now. I'll give you guys cards, and it's a QR code. You just have to fill out like a quick Google form, and then that will ask you a couple questions, and then we can set that up. We're doing more tests in the next couple weeks. We've got about half of our tests done at least, so there's not going to be a ton of those left. So if it's something you're super interested in, then take it today and use the QR code and figure that out.
Did you ever think of incorporating a mental component to that? Because I often say, you got to exercise the mind, like doing a lot of reading and stuff. So that I would think that might have an impact on aging as well.
For sure, that's above our pay grade. So for PTs, we're going to focus on that. We would probably lean on other medical practitioners to try to handle that. But yeah, the mental component is a huge part of that. So that's more like on the psychiatry side of stuff, which is just not our bag. Anything else?
How long have you been doing this program?
We've been developing it for about 2 years. We started the actual testing for research. I mean, we've been doing this in our office, for way more than years, but we never put a system together to try to get like a score for it. And then we partnered with the sales. We presented what we wanted to accomplish. Their students and their professors kind of put this together, and then now we're building the research now. So, and the research, our data collection will be done in the next couple of weeks, and then our analysis will start after that.
So is it a unique thing, or are there people doing it like a different model? Or?
There's tests. There's physical movement tests, like FMS, like you guys know about FMS. There's different movement tests. Those kind of look more like movement challenges than just like things that you can do, balance strength. So this is, it's not original to testing in physical therapy is not original. We will run you through all this stuff during like a normal course of care, but it's really kind of only focused on, you came to us with a shoulder problem, so we're kind of focused there, and then you should be able to do a push-up before you get out of here if that's one of your goals. We wouldn't necessarily look at, well, we would look at farmer's carry. We wouldn't necessarily look at your VO2 max, even though that's a huge component to successful aging. That's not what Blue Cross pays us to do, unfortunately. So we have to kind of fit inside of the guidelines of that. Anything else? All right, I'll hang out here for a little while. If you guys have questions about anything, then I'd love to talk to you about it because we're pretty excited about it. Thanks.